Welcome to the Sober Edge podcast, inspiration for alcohol-free living. I'm your host, Terry Patterson, functional nutritionist and This Naked Mind senior coach. The Sober Edge is a place to explore the infinite possibilities on the other side of drinking. In a culture soaked in booze, discover the wonder and joy of taking a different path. Meet real people living lives of purpose and passion, learn the truth behind the alcohol myths, and get ready to be motivated, inspired, and astounded by what is possible with the Sober Edge. Welcome. You are listening to the Sober Edge podcast, and this is episode 124. And I'm excited today to introduce you to Dustin Dunbar. And this is a name you're going to want to remember because Dustin is shaking things up in this alcohol-free space. He has written a book called You're Doing Great and Other Lies Alcohol Told Me that is more specifically for men, but I read it and enjoyed it. And it really is a fascinating look at the lies alcohol tells us. And one of the things that Dustin is passionate about, and we get into it in the conversation today, is all about banning alcohol advertising. As a father of two young daughters, he is very aware and concerned with the way that alcohol is displayed on television ads and commercials and TV and movies. And we even take a very famous star to task for his role in promoting alcohol. And Dustin also has a passion for helping others and has created the We Are AFR, alcoholfreerevolution.org, where he is offering coaching and support. And I love that his mission includes offering this on a sliding scale. So if you are someone who has been looking for support and maybe has felt a little priced out of some of the options, I invite you to take a look at that. And I want to read you his bio now because we don't talk a lot about his Hollywood past, but he does get into it in his book. And there's a little bit of information in his bio. So Dustin Dunbar grew up poor in Midwest America with an abusive, alcohol-addicted father and grandfather and vowed to never be like them. Devouring psychology books and researching addiction in his 20s, Dunbar earned a doctorate in psychology and believed at that time that he had broken his family's chains. In 2009, Dunbar was handpicked by Ryan Seacrest for LA Shrink and Endemol Productions' Dallas Life Coach, where Dunbar was the shrink and life coach on those pilots. After drinking moderately, responsibly, and socially for 20 years, he too became addicted to alcohol. He overcame his addiction at the age of 48 and has since been helping others overcome theirs. Dunbar is a coach at wearetheafr.org, a nonprofit online community helping others with alcohol addiction and raising consciousness. Dunbar's true passions are spending time with his two young daughters, writing, and sports. He currently lives in San Diego, California. And as I mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about his Hollywood background. We're going to talk about his passion for banning alcohol advertising. And I'm excited to watch what happens in the next year or so as Dustin hits the ground running with this organization to really make an impact. So I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. Thanks for tuning in. Well, hey everyone, it's Terry back with another edition of the Sober Edge podcast. And I am so excited because, as you know, I don't often get a chance to interview a gentleman on the podcast. I interview a lot of women. And so we're going to look at the other side of someone who has written a book more for men. Would you say that's true, Dustin?
Yeah, 100%. There's a lot of female authors out there on addiction, and Annie Grace is my personal favorite, but so she's the one who kind of woke me up. And so I'm following in her footsteps, and she said to pay it forward at the end of her book. And so that's what I did.
I love that. So, welcome to the podcast, Dustin Dunbar. You have recently published your first book, at least your first book around becoming alcohol free. Tell us a little bit more about the title and what prompted you to write a book for guys.
Yeah, you're doing great. And Other Lies Alcohol Told Me is the title. And it's just basically the story of how I became addicted to alcohol over a long period of time. It was a slow drip process for me. And growing up, I got, like everybody else, brainwashed into thinking that you could drink responsibly, moderately, socially, and that it was fine. And I was like, so that's what I did. And I was in sales and I was traveling around and I was living the high life. I grew up really poor in Oklahoma. So I was very fortunate to make a lot of money in sales, but what goes with that kind of life is alcohol. And if you're not one of the boys, with the CEO on the golf course doing shots of tequila with them, then you feel like you're going to be left out. You're not going to get the promotion, stuff like that. And so, I had to prove my worth as a man. And it was just a slow drip, like I said, addiction. But it wasn't, I was drinking like Camus wines. I was doing the whole high end, first class airplane, champagne, all this stuff. And yeah, at a certain point, it got to me. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I started just like with any addictive substance, I started craving it. My body did. And I started believing that I needed it to have fun, to like go to weddings, to do any kind of social events. And I was like, oh my gosh, with my background in psychology, I knew at that point that I was addicted. And I was never in the severe class, what we call the old school term that I do not like to use at all, alcoholic, type thing where you're reaching under the kitchen sink to grab a bottle before the day really starts and that kind of thing. I was in the low to medium level of addiction, and I luckily stopped it before I got to that point because obviously everybody starts at the low level, and that's what I'm screaming from the mountaintops about with this book and with all these podcasts and everything is you've got to be so careful with this substance. It is 100% addictive. It is ethanol, and it will get you. Nobody can handle their ethanol. Nobody. I don't care if you're the biggest, toughest, meanest rugby player in the world. If once enough of this substance is consumed, you will become addicted. And most people are already addicted and they don't want to admit it. They're in denial. They're in the low level or medium. And so that's what I'm saying is I'm just like, don't believe big alcohol lies that you can drink couple of glasses a night and get away with it.
Yeah, you bring up a really important point that we sometimes the common or the past language around alcohol has been that you are going to be able to drink moderately. And if you can't, there's something wrong with you. Whereas with other drugs, we call it other drugs and alcohol. We kind of separate alcohol out and we act as if alcohol is innocuous and alcohol gets the free pass and it's all on us as a human. But my background is a functional nutritionist, and I studied with Annie Grace. I'm one of her coaches. And so, yeah, it's fascinating to flip this on its head. And really, I love that you use the term shouting from the mountaintops because we really do need to go out loud with this message because we're working against decades and decades. And part of your book, which I was fascinated by, was the history of how alcohol started thousands and thousands of years ago. And we have been caught in this, what you call the matrix.
Yeah, it's a huge part of our culture. And Carl Jung, was the first to create or talk about the collective unconscious. And well, what comes with that is there's really good things that come with collective unconscious. Babies noticing if you're smiling or frowning, if you're sad or happy, things like that. They're just innate in all of us whenever we come into this world. But the other thing that is innate is some bad things. And that is alcohol was one of the biggest things that we have this collective unconscious lie illusion that alcohol benefits us. And it makes total sense because it's the only painkiller that's been around for thousands of years. So shamans, priests, every medicine man, everything. That was the only thing that they could kill physical and psychological pain, anxiety, depression. So since the dawn of human time, and it used to be in a, slop way back 10,000s of years ago that you had to kind of chug down. And now and then you would just use it sparingly. It was like, okay, they're needing to get their leg cut off. Let's get them totally as out of it as we can. What substance do we have? And that was it. Now, with big alcohol, they've got this stuff that where mango peach flavored martini in a can, and you can't taste the ethanol at all. It's been diluted and they've made it, the flavor's so good. But what you're dealing with is rotten fruit and vegetables that is a cancer causing substance, carcinogen, and it is so addictive, and you just have to be so careful, just like you would cigarettes. And that's the point of part of the lies, is that we treat this like it's the elixir of life, and all the ads, and in our collective conscious, it's like, oh, if we have alcohol around, then we are doing great. We're having a good time, then life is good. And in the lie, it's actually the opposite. It's, if you don't have alcohol running through your veins, you're at a higher level of consciousness. Alcohol, all it does is suppress the nervous system and numbs you down. So if you really want to get to that higher joyous level of consciousness, to remove the ethanol out of your blood and get in your central nervous system, will be firing on all cylinders, and you will feel life as it comes. And yeah, there's going to be tough times, but you deal with it in a conscious, healthy way, and you don't suppress the difficult times, and you learn how to deal with those, and relationships get better, your life gets better, and then the joy. That's the biggest part. That for me, I haven't drank it for 4 years now, and the amount of joy that comes up in me now, it's like this. I feel like I'm on, like I tingle all over, and my head kind of like lights up. It's actually doing it right now when I talk about it, because it's like this fun thing, and it's starting to happen more and more and more every day. And yeah, I did go through a couple years of, after I removed the band-aid of alcohol and dealt with my anxieties from childhood, abandonment fears, all kinds of stuff that I had to do personal development wise to figure out why I was suppressing, why I was drinking more than I should, and that kind of thing. And then you get through that and life becomes so beautiful.
Yeah, I have experienced that as well. So for me, it's been just a little over 8 years now.
Great.
And gosh, my life just looks completely different, and I wouldn't go back for anything. So you mentioned a couple of things. And one of the things you were talking about there, Dustin, I remember when I heard the first time that they used to use alcohol as an anesthetic up until the 1980s, when they decided it was too dangerous. And it's like, did we not get that message? Like, there's obviously a correlation. And then as you were talking about the rotten fruit and the flavors, right, that mask the ethanol, it reminded me of the difference that we have in our society around cigarettes. Because isn't it interesting that we've started to say, we can't have flavored vapes anymore because they are appealing to children. Horrors. And yet we have, in England, they literally call them alcopops because they make it like soda pop, to taste like soda pop, to market to children. And it's fascinating that we haven't made that connection yet.
Correct. And that's that collective unconsciousness that we still believe, our collective society still believes that it's fun, it's the elixir of life, and oh, let's put it in everything in every which way we can and have it around us at all times. And so until we collectively get through this and the majority of us wakes up to what this stuff truly is, which is cancer causing addictive substance, until that happens, then we're still asleep as a society. And until, a big part of what I'm doing with my nonprofit is getting alcohol advertising banned. So if you want to be a part of that, and we do meetings, we have coaching, we have all kinds of stuff as one part of the alcohol-free revolution. But the other side is just to go to the website, wearetheafr.org, and sign up to have alcohol advertising banned. And that is a big push. I put it in the book as well, that the Buddha says you create what you imagine, you create, and what you strive for. And so I got very detailed and I said, okay, alcohol advertising is going to be banned January 12th, 2028, just like cigarettes were banned. So we're having our cigarette awakening kind of moment in society, the zeitgeist of the times. You can feel it. There's all kinds of talk about alcohol and what's going on with it, and the younger generations are waking up to it. And so that's what this is all about, is just keep pushing and doing what Annie Gray says is waking everybody up.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I love that. We are going to definitely link in the show notes to that, your website and your nonprofit, so that people can get involved in that. And yes, I work with a lot of coaches. I've been part of some large coaching groups. There's now, maybe a couple of hundred coaches that have come out of This Naked Mind. I was in the first class. And so together we collectively are, yes, exactly what you said, Dustin. We're looking for a way to pay it forward. We're looking for a way to get alcohol advertising, like you said, banned or reduced, or get possible information out there. It's fascinating that we're just getting, in the last year or two, information from like Canada saying that no amount of alcohol is considered safe. And it's been so slow, but once we get this momentum, things are going to snowball more and more. And so how's the traction going with getting alcohol banned? Where are you guys at?
So the book just came out, January 9th, and I'm getting a lot of great feedback on it. And people are like, oh my gosh, why are we brainwashing our kids? And why have I been brainwashed? I'm so the brainwashing. So for me, that's what Annie Grace's book does, is unbrainwash you. And, she came from marketing background, and was a super high exec in advertising, American advertising, which is, they're basically like geniuses at brainwashing people. And so for her, that to write that and then unbrainwash. So that's what I'm doing too, is just taking this to men and trying to unbrainwash them as much as possible. And yeah, it's going great. It's funny because today I'm actually on the website. I am creating the different membership to get alcohol banned and everything. It's going to be posted, I would say, within the week. So right now, what is up is just for all the coaching meetings and things like that.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah. Thank you. And this will, we're recording this in real time. It's January 26th, 2024. So you've got a small amount of time, a window to get that done. And
Great.
again, I think there's so much momentum going. So you mentioned your book hit the streets on January 9th, and congratulations. It takes a long time to get those books out in the world, and it's so powerful to have these types of memoirs. And so you are very honest and real in your book, Dustin. I really enjoyed your vulnerability. And so sometimes in the coaching world, we'll go on podcasts, or some of us have been on conversations with Annie, as you were recently, and we end up on the other side saying we have a little bit of a vulnerability hangover. So how are you feeling now that all of your dirty laundry is out in the world?
It feels wonderful. And that's my biggest point of healing, is I wear a shirt around it that says be vulnerable. And so when I'm doing bigger, like all kinds of TV things and stuff like that, it's like be vulnerable. Because until you really get out there, and for men, this is probably the most difficult part of healing from alcohol addiction, is just saying, hey, this is me. And you put it out there on the table, put it all out there to whoever wants to know. And then we're able to get into the present moment and move forward and put that behind us. And yeah, we were all idiots when we were drunk. I was a complete buffoon. I told horrible jokes in front of people, disrespectful to my ex-wife, just, stuff that is like, oh my gosh, that is just unbelievable. And it's because you're not in your right mind whenever you have that much ethanol running through it. And so you forgive yourself and you get through that. You go and you ask for forgiveness from others, and then we move forward. And that's the point. But yeah, the vulnerability part, it was difficult. I'm not, it's like, especially, whenever you're writing it in detail, the stories and getting it all out there. And then it's this release. It's like journaling, and felt wonderful to get it out.
I love that because I was just having a conversation with a group that I'm in last night, and we were talking about how some of us at the end of our drinking, we're kind of drinking in secret. Like we are hiding how much we're drinking, or even denying to ourselves that maybe it's a problem or affecting us as much as it is. And then I work with so many people that when they stop drinking, they're also doing it in secret. It's like I was drinking in secret. Now I'm not drinking in secret. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Let's connect the dots here and let's give the power of vulnerability, the power that it has over shame. And I try to encourage my clients when they're ready to come out of the sobriety closet and really embrace the power that we have when we own our story and we heal from the past. It's such a beautiful opportunity. It's hard, it's scary.
Yeah, and I think it all goes around, feeling the shame at first of what you did for the past, and then the aloneness, and really just not knowing, you're in your shell and you not really feel safe out in the world with your new self. You're like, oh my gosh, I've had this awakening, and now I feel like this raw nerve because I've removed this toxic thing that's been suppressing my nervous system. So now these nerves and I'm just this raw nerve walking around. And you're like, oh, don't touch me. I need to like process this. So take your time. It's totally normal. But once you've had that realization that alcohol is terrible for you and you've woken up, then just know that that raw nerve, you'll get your confidence and your, things to say whenever you're out in social meetings and things like that. And that just keeps saying, when people ask you why you don't drink, I just keep going back to, I just feel so much better when I don't drink. And for men, it's like you're out with the guys. And I was just out last night at a whole singles event. And it was funny because 3 or 4 years ago, if I would have done that event, I would have been very nervous about what they're going to ask me if I don't drink, because it was at a winery. And they at the beginning right away, okay, they're doing a tasting. Everybody else is around with their wine glasses and everything, and I'm like, no, I'm gonna have a San Pellegrino, please. And of course, the guy next to me goes, oh, you're not gonna do the tasting? I go, no, man, I feel so much better when I don't have ethanol running through my veins. He's just like,
Yeah.
at first, the whole ethanol thing throws him too, like ethanol. So I mess with people now. Back in the day, I would just say, no, I feel so much better when I don't drink. So anybody out there who's new at just that's your key, and you don't have to say anything else. You do not need to defend your feelings about this or anything else. You just feel so much better when you don't drink. It wipes everything else out that they could say, because they're trying to drink to feel better. They think in their mind, because they're not awake yet, that ethanol is making them feel better. Whenever you flip that and you flip it in one sentence, then it's over and you just can move on.
Yeah, it's so good. I thank you for bringing that up. I was going to mention in your book, I loved when you said you don't need to over explain. Like we could
Yeah.
just stop, we have nothing to defend, wanting to feel good, wanting to prioritize our brain, our gut health, our sleep, our mental health. Like, let's just allow that to be better than good.
Yeah, you don't need to get in your past. No, the DUI, the whatever happened, if there was a rock bottom, anything like that, just don't even worry about it. The present moment, you're never going to find yourself in the past. We can sit there and on all our coaching, like I say, and we love it when you're vulnerable. We love doing all that, but you're never going to truly find yourself in the past. The only place you're ever going to find yourself is right here, right now, in the present moment. And so that's really the focus. And then we take that on how we're going to live our future lives now that we've woken up from this unconsciousness.
Yeah, it's something else from your book. I wrote a couple of things down because they kept sparking for me. You talk about this is like learning a second language. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so it's funny because I actually take away some terms, and like especially the word alcoholic, I get into that a lot and heavily because I actually went to an AA meeting online, and my grandfather was in AA, my brother was in AA. I have other people who were like, "Oh, you have to do AA. AA is the only way." And it's like And it's great. Becoming alcohol free is not a competition. So I love and respect all AA members, and they're part of the team. We're all in this together. And so but it didn't resonate for me at all. So whenever I got on there and I was on, like a Zoom call, they kept coming to me and saying, wanting me to say, "Hi, I'm Dustin, I'm an alcoholic." And the whole time I would just sit there in complete silence and smile at the camera. And I'm like, and not say anything. And they did it like 4 times. And inside I wanted to scream, "I am not an alcoholic. I am a joyous, alcohol-free man who was once addicted to alcohol, just like somebody who was addicted to cigarettes, and then now is cured." I see that cigarettes are disgusting. That my mom used to smoke cigarettes, and she sees it as completely disgusting. And she's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I ever did that. Can't believe I paid money. I can't believe I thought I looked cool." And she was brainwashed by the whole society, by all the advertising, looking cool. The Marlboro Man was doing it. Everybody was doing it back then. Same thing with alcohol. That is exactly how I feel. I'm like, oh my God, if I look at a bottle of the nicest wine you could see, like super high end Napa, Caymus, whatever, all I see is 13% ethanol. I don't shy away from any alcohol. I go right to it. And I'm like, oh my God, there's 40% ethanol in that bottle of tequila. And that bottle of tequila costs $90. And I'm just like, what? I literally burp in my mouth. And I'm like, my stomach kind of churns and all this stuff. And I'm just like, it's disgusting to me. So we use the word alcohol free, and we are joy, ease, and lightness. We are not defective people. There's not a percentage out there. So this is part of the lies that alcohol tells, is that there's only a percentage of people that can't handle their alcohol, and they're called alcoholics, and they're forever doomed and can't be cured and all this stuff. And oh, they're poor things. No, this is a complete different deal. And whenever you become fully awake out of alcohol addiction, you become joy, ease, and lightness, and you're not somber, sedated and all this stuff.
Yeah, and I know you're not a huge fan of the word sober, neither is Annie Grace. I use sober in my language because I think sobriety is a superpower for me. And I want to reclaim that word sober and make it cool and vibrant and joy, ease, and lightness. But I also love the term alcohol free. I think it's a beautiful offering to say that there's many ways to do the right thing. There's
So many
many
ways.
ways to freedom.
That's my favorite. One of my favorite Zen quotes of all time is, "There's as many ways to the one as there are people on earth." And that's the same thing with becoming alcohol free. There's as many ways to becoming alcohol free as there are people on earth. Everybody has their own history with alcohol, their own culture. Was it pushed on them as a young age, as like me, moonshine and whiskey growing up in Oklahoma and being a farmer, work ethic and all this stuff. Sports, it was like the guys were going to the game, and you got to drink Coors Lights and all these things, and here's the bottle of whiskey when we go hunting. And so that's my history. But somebody else's history might be they grew up in France, and it was just red, beautiful wineries everywhere all the time, something like that. So it's we all are so unique and so individual. So whatever resonates to you, whatever feels good. AA's free. Try AA. Go to an AA meeting. If that works for you, go for it. If going to weareafr.org and our nonprofit organization works for you, go for it. If doing this podcast with you, and it doesn't matter. The point is, just make sure that you are treating this addictive, cancer causing substance with so much respect, and that you're teaching your children that this, just like you would cigarettes. If you saw somebody smoking cigarettes around you and around your children while you were there, what would you say to them about that? Would you
Yeah.
say, "Oh my gosh, those are disgusting. This causes cancer." Da, 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 da. If somebody's drinking, or when I'm around my kids, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you guys, that causes so many wrinkles." My girls are all into this skincare stuff. They're 9 and 10 years old, and it's Sephora. By the way, I'm buying stock at Sephora. The amount of money that stuff costs for like this tiny little bottle, I'm like, that's $90. And then you look at the first ingredient, and it's like water. You're like, what is going on? Anyway, I'm like, okay, so every dermatologist out there in the world says the number one thing to not do is get in the sun. if you want your skin to look, healthy and good. So wear SPF, right? Number two, do not drink alcohol. It dries your skin like crazy. You end up looking like an old prune whenever you're, older. And so I'm on my girls about stuff like that. That's what they listen to. That's what their little egos are hearing is, what does this stuff do? And so you've got to start talking to people and your children, especially. We got to unbrainwash the whole culture about this stuff.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned, in your book that some people kind of pushed back against this model of becoming alcohol free. Like you were going to do damage if people don't go to AA. And it's fascinating to me. So I wonder if you've experienced this, Dustin. Annie mentions this too, Annie Grace, in her teachings and her book. And she said, people were afraid. And I think it's really interesting. You and I don't think we're afraid of AA, but sometimes the old timers in AA are afraid of us. And I think it's very interesting. And so, being part of this new movement, one of the things that I got a sense from your book that you took out of AA was the community aspect and the giving back. So, can you tell us more about why you created We Are AFR as a nonprofit?
Yeah. So the alcohol-free revolution it's like we were talking about earlier, it's a different philosophy, different terminology, really gets into science and the new science of CT scans. And we're seeing what ethanol does with the brain and that everybody can get addicted to an addictive substance. There's not this, back in 1935 is when AA was founded, and they only had x-rays back then. And all you can see there is bones, and that's pretty much it. And so now they just made a guess. They were like, why does it seem like certain people can handle their alcohol and it seem like other people can't? And they didn't have the extensive research and studies at all compared to what we do today. And so now we know for a fact that it's 100% addictive, and we don't have addictive personalities, genes, all these other things that everybody tries to make up to lies about alcohol to keep this alcohol elixir of life consciousness going, is all being demystified. And so, yeah, then the idea that AA members were against this, it really made me analyze that. And whenever I got into that, it was basically, it's like a religion for them, and it's their identity to have called yourself an alcoholic in front of a lot of people. So if you identify as an alcoholic, my program is probably not for you. Now, the alcohol-free revolution, please go there and sign up and get alcohol banned and all this stuff. But I definitely do not identify as that, as I was talking about earlier. And if you look at it, though, all I want them to do is just like Galileo with the church, whenever he asked the priests, look through the telescope, and they wouldn't do it. And they thought that it would, hurt the church and everything like that. And so with this, all I'm saying, look, AA members, please just look in the microscope. All I'm saying is look at the new testing that's come out. This is a substance that is 100% addictive. You're not defective. You're not, nothing is wrong with you. All you did is exactly what I did, which was got brainwashed and had this collective illusion coming into this world that it was good for me to do. And then the society and everything, all you did was get addicted to an addictive substance. And now all we got to do is take it away and out of our systems and get unaddicted and unbrainwashed. And then we're free. We're alcohol free, joyous people. And that's all I'm asking is just please look through the microscope, and don't put me in jail for the rest of my life and all that like the church did.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. And yeah, I think what you bring up there that's really important too, Dustin, is language. When we identify and we call ourselves an alcoholic, like I've never done that. When I, in October of 2015, when I stopped drinking, I literally said to myself, okay, if I can't do this, I might have to go to meetings. I didn't know of anything else that was out there at the time, and there really wasn't a lot. It turns out Annie Grace was publishing her book right around the same time, but I didn't even think to look and see if there was another path. And so I kind of scared myself straight. Like I was terrified to go to meetings. And so I literally didn't want to go. But a few years later, I found myself sitting in the rooms of AA with a family member. And it was a fascinating experience based on the path that I had chosen and taken and the work that I had done becoming an alcohol freedom coach. And it's been, I have gained more respect. I have no fear of the people that want to go through AA. I mean, like we said, any way that you are going to ditch the ethanol and the cancer causing poison is a good way. So, yeah, it's just that was a little bit of my own story. It's been fascinating. And I think that's why when I found Annie Grace, before she was even offering her coaching program and the year-long path, I resonated so much with that because I was working as a nutritionist trying to help my clients understand why it was so hard to stop drinking. Like they would go on, like a sugar detox with me and they'd be like, well, just don't take away my wine. And it was like, that's where we're going to start. But I didn't have any tools. And so, finding someone that was sharing like you are, the science, the understanding that the marketing piece, just unraveling all that has been so powerful for so many people who, like you and I, don't resonate with calling ourselves an alcoholic. And part of it for me too was I didn't want to be fixated on alcohol for the rest of my life. I had done that for decades. I love when Annie Grace says it's liberation, not fixation. And that to me is the golden ticket.
I mean, preach, go. This is it's so beautiful. And just obviously, congratulations on your awakening and your higher consciousness. And that's what, for me, that's what we're here for. We're not this whole idea of like getting these beautiful houses. I had everything. Like growing up poor, I did really well in sales, like I said earlier, and I had everything. I had the beautiful house. I'm already retired. That's what this is all about. I'm totally giving back. All my proceeds to the book go to helping people fight alcohol addiction and getting alcohol ads banned. So this is all just total passion for me. I could be, out on the golf course or surfing or traveling the world, and here I am talking about booze, like so. But I love it. It gives my life meaning, and so yeah, the just overall consciousness raising is what you're doing, and I'm so happy to be on your team, part of this, and just it feels wonderful.
Yeah. So I want to touch on something in your book. Like you have a pretty colorful past. You have some connections to Hollywood and acting and modeling and some wild stories that came out of your Hollywood days. So, we have this place in Hollywood now where we're starting to see celebrities having their own consciousness moments and, celebrities that are coming out as not drinking and alcohol free and talking about it publicly, even putting out drinks that are, catching our collective consciousness. So how do you think it's going with Hollywood? Because they have so much influence.
Yeah, I think it's going really well, but I do want to talk about Mr. George Clooney for a moment. I'm calling him out because he came up in my dream whenever I had my awakening dream and that's where the alcohol matrix idea comes from. Is I had a dream where I am literally laying on a gurney. It's the whole matrix scene, and I'm plugged into these tubes that liquid's running through, and everybody else around me is asleep and on these same gurneys. And I'm starting to wake up and see all this around me. And I'm like, what is going on? And George Clooney's there with his Casamigos. The toucan from Guinness is there. The Coors Light Bikini Girls, French sommelier with his white, thing on his arm. And then, some two big alcohol executives, advertising execs, and they're standing over me and they're like, uh-oh, Dustin's waking up. That's what George says. And I'll never forget that. He's in his, tuxedo and he's looking all awesome. He's got that Casa Amigos and he's got a shot glass. And he's like, we need to give him more. And I'm like, no, like get the hell away from me. And I stand up on this gurney and I start pulling all the tubes of alcohol out of me and just ripping them off. And that was my awakening moment. And I woke up out of that dream and I'm like, oh my gosh. And then a couple of months later, I'm reading Catherine Gray's book. What is it? Sober. The unexpected joy of being sober.
Mhm.
And she had the exact same experience that I did. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is a collective consciousness awakening where she calls it alcohol matrix, the whole bit. And I'm like, yes, this is like not just a single thing with me. And so that's whenever I was like, with my psychology background, getting into it. But yeah, so there's two sides. It's funny because Brad Pitt is like known as George's best running mate and everything like that. Well, he doesn't drink at all. He hasn't drank for a long time, and he just so it's happening, and I feel really good about it. But let's teach our kids again. Whenever it's going to be a long time, we got to see show if their 21-year-old is on screen and they love that 21-year-old and they're drinking like what's her name? Taylor Swift is huge with my girls. So some of her songs talk about teenager drunk stuff or whatever, being drunk in the back seat of the car. And I'm like, I talked to him about it. I'm like, hey, even Taylor Swift, is in this consciousness. This stuff is really unhealthy. I bet she doesn't hardly drink at all because her skin is glowing. And if you really look into the background of these stars, they know that if they show up bloodshot, hungover at these, she's doing 3-hour concerts and stuff like that. I bet if we talk to her, she's barely drinking anything, or otherwise she wouldn't be able to do what she does. And so it's just that keep, telling yourself most of it is portrayed, especially in songs and music, these high-end stars, and they're actually not partaking in it very much, but they act like they are.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. And it's kind of, they're probably caught in their own layers. You find I think it was Snoop Dogg when was on the Super Bowl with all of the hip hop artists. Some people in my community were talking about how he doesn't drink, and yet he promotes an alcohol because there's cash there. And if this is not you, I apologize. I think I'm saying correctly, but it's really fascinating. I always think that even sometimes when I was first just a nutritionist, I didn't have my alcohol training, free training yet as a coach. I was noticing in the nutrition world that people were talking about it who were wellness professionals and high up. And I was like, what? I don't think they actually drink. And yet they're saying, oh, moderation is fine. But it's like they are so dialed into the way that toxic substances affect their body, they're probably not drinking. And so I think there's a place to call that out as well. It's like, could we speak authentically about our own consumption before we go out and advertise it as the elixir?
Yeah, and I just saw a study a couple of weeks ago that said only 2 glasses of wine or 2 glasses of alcohol per week causes a 15% increase in breast cancer. I'm like, wait a minute. This stuff is so toxic that literally like 2 glasses a week, I'm not talking about 2 glasses a night, 15% increase in breast cancer. So I know that your people listening are mostly female. So you guys you get your cancer screenings. So it is so crazy how this stuff is now we're waking up to, whoa, what are we doing? And we've got to just really, as a nutritionist, I mean, it's a spiraling effect for me with how bad, like if I were to drink just 2 glasses, like a couple of beers, like let's say 7% IPAs, the craft, whatever. The next day, here's what I would be like, ooh, I don't really feel like working out. I don't want to get up early. I don't really feel like working out. It's going to take me a while to get up. I want to eat fried food. I you just want to watch, sports on TV. I don't want to play with my kids. Here's what happens if I don't drink 2 glasses of IPA. I want to get up early. I want to go work out. I want to eat healthy greens and fresh foods and fruit and stuff like that. And I want to play with my kids. I want to get off the couch. It's like and I'm not talking about guzzling this stuff. I'm talking about a couple of beers, and then you do it the next night and the next night and next night. And such a huge difference in what your body craves and wants because you're suppressing that central nervous system is just down. So we got to fire that thing back up and get those feelings going and get your life back into healthy, active joy. I tell guys, and I'm like, look, I'm now 52 years old. my 52-year-old self would kick the crap out of my 35-year-old self in a fight. Like if I had to fight my 35-year-old self right now, I'd be like, let's go. I'm taking you, I can take you easy. And
Yeah.
it's because, and the only reason is because I don't drink anymore. I really haven't changed hardly anything with my workout schedule, things I do. I removed ethanol, and now I am vigorous, and just I feel so much better than a 35-year-old.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah. For me, when I stopped drinking, I went to nutrition school within like 3 months. And part of it was like I looked around with all my extra time and energy and thought, what am I doing? And so I thought, well, I've always been a wellness enthusiast. I'm going to go learn more and maybe I can help some other people along the way. And it really is true that when we ditch alcohol, we have this space. And in that space, there's so many possibilities.
Yeah, and I like what you were saying earlier is you don't really recognize yourself 8 years ago and like who you were anymore. That is how healthy you're going to get if you continue to not drink and take this substance away. And this is not abstinence. Everybody's like, oh, so you're preaching abstinence. I'm like, no, absolutely not. This is another terminology. This one I wish I would have put in the book. There's certain things that are coming out now, and I'm like, oh man, I should have talked about abstinence in the book. So now I can do it on podcast. Um, Abstinence basically means that you're removing something that you typically indulge in, right? And so with this, you're not indulging. That word gets me because this is a toxic, terrible, addictive substance. That's not something to indulge in. It's something that whenever you remove it, your life becomes indulgent because so you're not taking something away from your life, you're giving your life everything and giving your spirituality, your consciousness, your relationships, you're giving that so much beauty and so much joy and so much happiness that will blossom and able to grow. Whenever you keep suppressing it and putting it down, it just keeps kicking it down into the dirt. And so, this whole January, like dry January, sober October, I'm like, I'm not a fan of those because it's this white knuckling thing where you're like, oh, if I get to this point, I can prove to people that I made it 30 days. And so I'm not addicted like other people. Au contraire, mon frere. That is like if you're doing dry Januaries and you're not, first of all, if you're not making it through a month, you're addicted. Get out of denial. Let's go. The other thing is if you feel like need to do a dry January, you're probably addicted. So let's get out of denial. Let's get to where we're like, you could probably be in the low level, but if you're like, oh, I need to do a dry October, I really need to like quote unquote sober up, that kind of thing. That is a telltale sign that you really need to look at what alcohol really is and wake up your consciousness, not take it away and feel like, oh, if I could just make it this next 15 days, then I'll be okay. Then you start all over again and you're like doing it again and you're doing it again. And you're just this whole spiraling effect. So stop with the dry January, stop with the dry October, research what alcohol actually is, rotten fruit and vegetables, and you're consuming a rotten fruit and vegetable liquid that is 100% toxic, 100% poison, and you're brainwashed. And that's it, period. And get yourself unbrainwashed, get it out of your system, and get your life back and be that joyous child that you were whenever you were 9, 10 years old, dancing around. You didn't need alcohol to dance. You were at parties, you were at weddings, and you were running around on the dance floor like crazy and laughing, and you're grabbing your kids and grandma and everybody running around. That's the joy that I'm talking about. Jesus, whenever he talks about entering the kingdom of heaven, he says that we need to be like our consciousness needs to be like children, and children don't drink alcohol. So think about that for a second. It's like it can have that same consciousness as a child, that joy, but whenever you're on alcohol, you're not entering into that present moment, that eternal joy and ease and lightness that is that heavenly realm that is here and now. You can actually have it, but you're never going to have it if you're drinking alcohol.
Yeah, well said. Thank you for that. It's true. And the reality is that if you're questioning how much you're drinking, if you're starting to ask these questions, lean in. That's the time to, like you said, get more information, take a break, and see how you feel. I mean, it's so powerful to say, is alcohol adding something to my life versus, well, I'm going to be missing out. I mean, that was my biggest fear. I thought I had no idea what life was going to look like without alcohol. I just knew I was miserable drinking. I thought I would be miserable not drinking. But I thought, well, I could try it. And so, yeah, I think that we all need to get much more um, curious about what is really happening here. And it's just so powerful that you have a program and a platform for people to connect around. So tell us a little bit more about we are I wrote it down because I'm going to mix it up. We are the AFR.org.
Yes, good job. We are the AFR.org, and it is the alcohol-free revolution. So we are the alcohol-free revolution is what it stands for. And it is something I created, just like you. I didn't feel like I had a space, a safe space to go to whenever I was becoming alcohol-free. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to create this space where people can come, like-minded people, and they can get in and be a part of a community. I had what was called the Sober app, I Am Sober app, and it was good, but I was just texting, people, and it wasn't that real connection. And so now I've set it up where I have coaches and I have breathwork coaches, I have hypnotherapists, I have all kinds of relationship experts, and then of course I have people from AA, I have old timers from AA that are coaches with this. And it's just awesome because we are a team. And what's cool is you get different points of view whenever you're on these calls, that you're being vulnerable and you're getting your stuff out. And then there's like, we give feedback and you take whatever you want from it. And it's so cool to see the different points of views. And we deal with a lot. Like I had really bad abandonment fears, from childhood. And then I realized that my biggest fear was being abandoned from the universe and just death and kind of psychological death in general. And so I talk about that a lot. And, the whole being alone, how the tagline for the alcohol-free revolution is you will never walk alone. And that's our mission, is just to be there and be with people. And then to watch the joy start coming out. And it doesn't take long. It takes 10 days scientifically for alcohol to be completely out of the human body. So after that, it's all 100% psychological. And that's where the true work comes in. And it's funny because we don't even hardly talk about alcohol that much in our meetings at all. We talk about all these other things that give us anxiety. And usually it's relationships and how to set boundaries. As men, we grew up with a world where we could either show our happiness or show our anger. And so we teach men, how to set calm boundaries, how to speak to their partners, how to speak to their children. And oh, that's probably been the best thing for me, is just to be like, whenever I feel any kind of anger or resentment towards anybody else, I know that's a red light warning. I'm like, I have to set boundaries. This is upon me. I take responsibility. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling resentful towards this person. And I'm talking about my kids. I'm talking about grandma. I'm talking about everybody. You know what I mean? If any kind of resentment or anger ever comes up, then we need to know, I need to set a boundary. I need to communicate in a calm, safe way with this person. And so we teach that. And then your anxiety in life, and you're dealing with your bosses and things, it smooths everything out to become, this joyous alcohol-free person who is communicating in a completely different way. And people are like, who are you? What are you? And what is going on?
Oh,
And
that's so good.
yeah.
I love that so much. I thank you for putting that out there. And, you bring up an important point, Dustin, is that we really can't do this work when we're kicking back poison every night, pouring poison down our throat. And, there is work to do. And there's healing, but there's also so much beauty and opportunity in this world when we are out of the matrix. So thank you so much for coming and sharing your story on the podcast. I'm going to link everything in the show notes so people can find your organization, they can find your book. And I hope we'll continue this conversation as you move forward with banning alcohol advertising. I think it's amazing. I think my audience is going to love that and want to get behind that.
Yeah, and thank you all so much for the support. Let's do this alcohol-free revolution with our hands high in the air and be joyous and get out there and change the world, change consciousness, and help our children.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for tuning in to the Sober Edge podcast. This is a place for important conversations and a safe place to question everything you thought you knew about drinking. If you're looking for your sober edge, I want to invite you to connect with me at thesobernutritionist.com, where you can grab my free resource, Becoming More, a guide to loving your sober life. And I would be so grateful if you enjoyed this podcast, if you would leave a rating and review, as it will help more people find their sober edge.